we do have quorum. Cecilia is joining us in a couple minutes. She's running a little late, and then, I know that. I think that Ray's coming. Both of us coming. Ray's coming.
There, right?
Hey, Ray.
You can sit here if you want, right?
All right.
Next.
So we have almost everybody.
This thing always reminds me of the Brady Bunch intro, doesn't it? You're gonna act like you're looking at the person in the next box.
That's right.
I want to acknowledge folks from the public here. Hello, both online and in person. Could we have a timekeeper for today to keep us on track? Cheers. And we have a minutes taker today to take our minutes.
I could take a shot at that, okay?
You're a good man.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, but I can't, the internet here stinks.
So I can give you a pen, just paper.
Well, no, I've got stuff on here I was planning to project, and I can't even get an email.
Are you using,
Public, Richmond.
MMC TV guest?
No.
And there should be a document there that might have some passwords on it. Give that to Brad, there might be some.
If you click on the.
Is that working?
You can click on it, and it's on there, you should get in. Is this to get into this Zoom?
No, he's just looking for the Wi-Fi. Oh, that's the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Who's the camera director?
Yeah, there you go.
He keeps switching from.
So if anyone's trying to get online, we do have
That's
this.
incredible.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, doesn't it look like the Brady Bunch intro?
That's wild.
that's really hard to watch.
That is a miracle.
If anyone else is trying to get on their computer and they're not getting the Wi-Fi to work, there is a password there. We can password. So last month's minutes, are there any additions, changes, edits to last week's minutes?
I saw Bob Lowe, one of the uses of his name, he had an extra E.
I'm sorry.
Down, Bob Lowe's name, down in the text somewhere. I mean, it's right in a couple places, just once there's an E on the end.
Okay.
That's in it. Is that the question?
No, it was about a name spelling. Yeah. Anyone else have any changes? Great. Can I get a motion?
Since I heard them, I don't.
Yes.
I move we accept the minutes from last meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just a comment that they're good minutes. I like them. This is a lot of good information.
Okay.
Staying because I wasn't here.
You were here in spirit. Any additions or changes to the agenda? Although I should say, I think that we actually can't do that anymore based on some open meeting laws. We can't actually change. And can't add new items to the agenda. So,
So you can just blurt it out randomly.
One thing is that
Keep saying it.
they're doing somewhere under operates and as an item, the email that we got from Ethan Tapper saying that it's no longer county forester and he names Brandon Benedict as his replacement. So we might just.
I just did it, Ian. I think that's all we need to know.
Well, if we discuss it, I would suggest we, like, some moves to introduce ourselves to the new forester and see what he wants to do, maybe go to the forest and check it out.
I second that.
All in favor?
Yeah,
Okay, noted.
no, I think Ethan was a wonderful fourth for Chittenden County Forest. I hope his successor can fill his shoes. That's a tough role.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough role, but just even did such an outstanding job.
He'll still be around.
Yeah, not going far, right.
He's writing management plans for
Ah, hey.
Yes,
your company.
forestry.
So I want to just open it up to the public, if anyone has a comment before we get started. Dan, can you move your computer back just slightly? Perfect, because I can't see the little hands when they come up. Thank you. Okay, no comments? Let's jump into our first agenda item, which is just updates. I've got two on here, starting with me. So the first update is about open meeting laws. Lisa Miller and Jay Furr joined the RCC meeting, the Richmond Conservation Commission, earlier this month. And they had discussed at length the very issue that we were talking about last time. And they had discussed it and had a slightly different interpretation. So I'm gonna tell you what they told me in that meeting, what they told the entire RCC in that meeting. And my feeling, my recommendation, though we could discuss this, is we follow the select board's guidance. Even though it might not fit exactly what we were told, that is our sort of governing body, and so I think we do our due diligence by adhering to their guidance. They said that, one, we have to be really careful about not calling any group of people on a committee who are working on something a subcommittee, right? So we would strike that name from all, it's just people working on a thing, right? We want to make sure, obviously, that we don't have quorum for that. That is a non-decision making body. And I brought up the fact that when we do work, so for example, we are working on a stewardship, part of the stewardship plan. They said, great, when you do that work, what do you do with that? I said, we share out, we provide an update during our meeting, present that to the public, they can comment on that. They said, great, that really feels like a good balance between getting work done and being fully transparent and communicative with the public to know what work is getting done. And I told them about some of the, the work that we were doing, and they said, yeah, that's just the work we have to do, and you couldn't do that and have open meeting laws for every single time you get a couple of people together to work on a thing. And so I think that struck me as being in that murky gray area that we talked so much about last time, but that was the guidance from the select board, is continue doing what you're doing. Make sure you don't call them subcommittees. You don't ever have a quorum. You don't make decisions. Make it shared out at your monthly meeting.
Okay.
I'm presented this meeting at the public meeting without any updates on information from those working groups. I mean, that's what we're doing, and that's how we should continue.
So I have a question about the number of people on those committees. I know the guidance that we received from the training said 2, no members of the public on those. So that sounds like we're going with something different. So in that case, then, there was a limit on how many people could join these. So I didn't get to join some of those that I would have liked to. So what about that?
Yeah, it's a gray area. So they were like, it should be 3, but not a quorum. Not a quorum for sure, but maybe, so it was like.
Well, Cal really separated out that it doesn't matter how many people are on your committee. A working group, a subcommittee is not based on those that are less than a quorum in that subcommittee. Those are 2 separate topics. So.
The select board made it clear that any working group would have to be less than a quorum.
Right, okay, right. Okay.
So that's what the guidance is.
Right, so that could be 4 people, then it doesn't have to be 3.
Yes.
So there's more room for people to join that would like to.
It could be, am I right, then it could be 4 members of the committee and maybe 2 members of public, so the total of 6. Would that be?
Yeah, members of,
That was 4 or 6.
no, that would, members of the public would not count towards the quorum.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question is, or my suggestion is this should be made known to all town committees, so as it's sort of uniformly. I mean, is it?
We should have a committee to
So,
share.
I mean, I'm thinking, right, suggestion would be that Josh clarifies to committee chairs, all of them, this is how we should be voting.
Do you wanna send a message to Josh suggesting that?
Yeah, that's a consensus that we should do, I feel there should be a uniformity across all committees, and it shouldn't be up to each committee to sort of figure out the process, should be clear
Yeah,
to all of us.
I think if you wanna provide that feedback as the co-chair of the ACFC, that would be helpful. That there's public knowledge for all committees, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
What may happen is he will run it by the town attorney. The LCT, and then we're right back where we were with, a sort of bureaucratic company.
So it doesn't really be open against down so what is it?
Continues to reopen it, because the state doesn't really know, I think.
So you suggest.
You know what I suggest, we're doing a good job.
I think we're following the boss's lead, which is the
Right.
select board, and
Yeah.
we have consulted with them and been very clear about what we're doing and have gotten the okay. That fits with how we understand it, and that feels like a good position to be. Great, okay, so. we can
So
keep going.
no members of the public?
Nope, members of the public can, they just don't come towards the forum.
Okay.
And I forgot to mention this before we're sharing out, but I wanted to just say the general culture for our committee, that we're gonna be sharing out a bunch of things and a bunch of things that people put a lot of work into. And so just to remind folks that it's great to provide critiques, it's great to have differences of opinion, it's great to have robust discussions. But just remember the work and effort people put into the things that they're presenting on.
Yeah.
We are presenting on a lot of things, and so there's sort of a certain amount of respect and a certain amount of just kindness we wanna offer each other for like the collective work that we're doing. So I think that's just like a good reminder too, as people kind of like are vulnerable, like I did all this work, here it is, and so it's good to lead with like appreciation. And know that there's like good people doing good work behind all these things. Okay, my next topic is, in that spirit, my next topic is ACFC bylaw changes regarding my position, which is the RCC representative, and Chase's position, which is the RTC representative. We got a bylaw change from both the select board and from VLT, so that's okay. So now if Chase and I are not present, we do not affect the quorum whatsoever. So this committee could still make a motion and pass that, even if Chase or I, or both of us were not here.
When you say not affect the quorum whatsoever, you mean you don't count toward the 9, or if we still have 7, we're good?
Yeah, so the previous law stated that without Chase and I present, we
Yeah,
could not have
Can't
a
do anything,
quorum.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and now we just, we act like any other committee, which
Right,
is,
right.
a quorum is a quorum, it doesn't matter which collection of
Who
people it
exactly,
is, yeah,
You're
exactly.
still part of the quorum, you're just not
Yeah.
a special part.
We're not special.
Okay, well, you're very special.
Thanks, that clarified.
Yeah, it's great. I guess I should have started with, we're not special.
That wouldn't be totally
You're
accurate.
not extra special.
You're not actually.
Yeah,
So, that was good, that was an easy fix.
We're not bound to have like trails and conservation approval for every single
Yeah,
thing,
Right,
basically.
right.
and it actually, I mean, this is just sort of like a reflection on the process, but it was actually like an incredibly smooth process. And the select board, like Ian attended the meeting, it was like very easy, BLT was super easy, so that's just good to know in the future if we have other bylaw changes, and I know we've talked about some, that it might actually be a little bit easier than what I feared originally.
It's in the minutes of the select board, actually. So I suppose somewhere the document should be amended and
Right.
put on record. And should I, maybe that's my task then, to talk with Josh about just
Updating.
keeping a record of my bylaws.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ian, because I don't know who's in charge of like keeping those updated, is that us or is that the town? So yeah, that's,
Well, it's on the website, I think.
it is on the website, yeah, there's a link to the bylaws.
So
Yeah, you
that
could-
should be right.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Brett? Website? Want to give a website update?
Oh, yeah,
That was on.
so Duncan. Was the hero here, so I'm gonna try to share screen. Oh,
Says you're connecting to audio.
yeah, no, I don't wanna connect that, I'll get feedback.
Yeah.
Let's try this.
That game report.
Yeah, you sure did.
There,
Oh, nice.
is that showing? Hey,
Oh, perfect.
woo-hoo, how you like that? So, yeah, we went over, the outline the last time, this is pretty much, I think it follows it, you know, in a couple back and forths with Duncan, and we really nailed it, he was a great guy to work with.
Like, oh, it's so much better already.
So.
So we didn't talk about this little idea, but we were gonna have I mentioned, it'd be nice to lead off with a photo of the forest. And there's one there now, on the old one or the current one. But I thought, you know, one way we might be able to, you know, if we can settle on a vision statement, lift something from that. And I just grabbed those words, which actually on the revision later, you'll see those have changed. It's obsolete already. So it kicks off, people, let me get off. One thing. With an introduction. You know, it talks about, you know, what the forest is and visiting it. And it's got links down below to the rec map. The smart code version, we'll probably take that off until we actually get one. And that shouldn't be a bullet. Under where it says use your phone, we should kill that bullet. That's just an explanation for the smart code thing. And then the townwide trail conditions, I think you brought that up. Chase, is that's live right now? I could put that, I could find that, or it's coming up.
It is,
RMT.
should we, it's linked on the RMT
Okay, I'll find
webpage,
Yeah.
right on their front page.
'Cause some of these are live. I don't think that one is. Okay.
Curious whether.
So then it quickly goes, you know, come to one of our meetings, tells people when they are. Then it goes kind of goes right back into the, you know, news and events. These are hypothetical, I threw out something about the naturalists, a little warning about turkey hunting season, which will be over in a couple weeks, but. You know, that kind, we can put that kind of stuff up. So it's kind of, I don't know how many of you guys know, but there's a page in iNaturalist just for the forest. Unfortunately, they don't have the right shape map, but that's kind of the forest is in there.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah, there's a group.
yeah, it's called a project. is
Yeah.
the word, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a few people who are out there picking all kinds of stuff, plants, mainly plants. You know, then, something about Velcro we might put, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
We don't have to go into contact there. And then, what you can see there, we talked about, all the, you know, the various critters. There's a grid there that, goes by natural community and what tends to hang out there. And we're probably more likely to see those things. Then a list of the various studies and stuff that we've had. With some maps. Kind of going from landscape scale down to fine tuning, like, so the biodiversity rankings, you know, it's where we are in the overall forest block. Then we go into, you know, Airwoods maps of the natural communities, show the BLT ecological protected zones. The heat map came out of the Field Naturalist program,
Yeah, the
stuff
one
like
with,
that. You know,
the circle, the targets, the concentric circle, which he.
it's one, yeah, one through the reds and the blues.
Oh, it's the one.
Yeah. The VLT has the circles, maybe that's right.
Okay,
Around the vertical.
yeah.
And something about us. Maybe we put our latest bylaws in and contact. Pick this bit up, this is on the current page. The meetings. Then want to see the management plan, current one is there with its maps and appendices. I split those up, so the management plan is like 50 pages and the maps and appendices are 250, I think. It's a huge amount of stuff. It's just two PDFs. Some of the background, the town plans, and the easement. How we update the plan, which is kind of the lead into the MP2, the revision we're working on now. So we talked about the update, the consultant's report, the original Airwood stuff. The initial map, we could put the alternative, the current alternative. Airwood's follow-up report when they went out in the fall, I think, but I think it was fall. Did some fine scale stuff. The original draft of the update. And both versions, the clean and then the one with that actually showed the proposed changes. And then the land acknowledgement. I broke that off because it's kind of hefty, but we can tweak this kind of stuff.
I like it.
Go to community inputs, yeah. Then we get to some Ian's work, the forestry management plan. These two now sort of overlap, the comprehensive management plan and the forestry sort of overlap, but now they're split pretty clearly, I think. And that's the set of maps that he's got on there now, he being Ethan. A video about it. That's it.
Great.
Brad, that looks awesome. It's like a lot of work.
It wasn't too bad. Yeah, it wasn't too. Duncan had a fair amount of stuff, but it's all detailed. Little going back and forth.
Yeah,
thank you.
Really great. As the steward and the holder of the largest collection of information
Yes.
relative to the forest,
Okay.
do you see any missing pockets of information that could be put up in an annex or another page? I mean, because this main page is really nice and neat, but I know that there's other materials. What do you think?
So obviously, there's a compromise between too much information and too little information.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about making a link from what I've assembled to this official town website thing on a page on our website page. And I'm all for it. From what I've created probably needs work and what to be done on it. So that would be my answer. I mean, my comment to Brian, I could just keep going, is I think the philosophy is, or the overall objective here is to make this page more directed at the forest rather than the community. I think that's impressive.
And also make it a little easier for the community to use, I think.
Yeah.
You just have to scroll down a little bit to get into the nitty gritty stuff that we're dealing with. But, at least it's consolidated. But yeah, I mean, we can add a link to that. I think it'd be great. Or a partial version of it.
Mhm.
Yet again, I would encourage people to look at what I've created, and what I mean to try and make it. And Daniel noticed that it doesn't show up in the Google search, which I think is a property of the way that I've set up that web page.
It's starting to now. I noticed it didn't before, yeah, you
Okay.
use all the keywords and it didn't show.
But I think what I would prefer was that once we're agreed on it, it comes down to what I've created, that we link to the from. Yeah, well, could you, for my benefit, maybe others, just sort of page through real quickly, so
Sure.
we get the big picture again.
Sure.
So I have four comments. My first comment is Brad, this is awesome. Thank you so much. This is just such a better, amazing resource for all of us. My first comment, or my second comment, is that I think that a lot of people going to the forest want to kind of know, like, what are the rules first, and we kind of lay out some like loose rules, but we do actually have a fairly comprehensive list from the management plan, so I wonder if where we have that top bullet.
Yeah,
That we would have, where it says recreational map, that
right.
like town.
Yeah,
Town like the
yeah, you
rules and
know,
regs might be there.
yeah, no, they're on the recreational map, though, aren't they?
Yeah, that's a good question. That-
Yeah, so I threw a few in, like,
If they're on the rec map, then that
yeah,
is great, and
That
that's.
would-
It looks like Nancy chimed in
yeah,
with almost the same thing that you said.
Oh, okay,
oh,
cool.
good.
So, and maybe what we could do, Brad, is change that hyperlink to recreation map and rules or something, so that people would know that.
Okay, yeah, good. Cecilia's coming.
Okay. And then my other two quick comments were that, I think that it might be cool, I'm not sure about this, but like if there was a folder embedded in this that was like resources for committee members. So we have a lot of documents that are from our agendas, and I often go back to like previous agendas. But I think we could organize like a series of folders, so if you were like, oh, I wanna go back and look at that, like, you know, that document that we had 2 months ago, that at least we know where to that could live. Cause I think a lot of that stuff lives in so many places, so if there's like and then the public could access it, like, oh, I heard in that meeting, they talked about this document, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, this is gonna be some work, but we have a Google Drive that's associated with the committee. The committee has a Gmail account. There's a lot of stuff in that Google Drive dating back to the very beginning of this document, and I think it'd be worth our while in the next like 6 months, let's say, for someone to comb through that and just make sure that if there's anything living in there that should be on here, that it gets moved. So I'm just like throwing that out as an idea, cause it is like, there's a lot of documents on there and I go through it a lot and sometimes I'm like, oh wait, this thing, you know? So that'd be a good combing thing for one of us to do at some point.
Is that open to access now?
No, I mean, only Ethan and I have access, there's only so many people that can have access,
Right.
but we can definitely share it with anyone.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people should have like viewable access,
Oh,
but maybe
yeah.
not editable access.
Right, right. Good. Okay.
This is great, very readable, what would folks think about next to our name and the term of our, that we might have contact information, so if. At least the chairs, phone numbers and email addresses, or maybe all of us phone numbers and email addresses. If that's, no,
The downside on that are bots.
Yeah.
Like roam the web
Yeah.
and they'll get your contact.
oh, all right,
Yeah.
So that's why you usually have a contact form,
gotcha, okay,
and then, you know, whoever's in charge of that can ask a question.
fine.
I like the spirit of the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
How do we get in touch with the chair?
yeah,
The chair,
there's a contact,
Website page lists the
contact,
email address.
contact the committee.
Richmond Town
that
Forest.
should take you-
Okay, yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, that brought up an email to Richmond Town Forest at Gmail.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And that's one of the, actually, I'll calls to me, so.
Is that how?
The wait to speak with a committee member is approximately 25 minutes. Please hold.
If you have a medical emergency.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cecilia's waiting.
Okay.
Cecilia, come in.
Oh, so I see, we can't hear you, maybe you have to.
I know,
Well,
it's
share.
very slow. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, it keeps cutting out. So I was trying to catch, it looks like, just 3 quick things. One, is there a warning about ticks up near the top? I think that would be important.
Not yet.
Yeah. It's a very ticky place, as we all know. And then I was trying to look at the address. It looks like it's mock-Andrews-community-forest- and then I don't know what. So it would be easier for me to scroll through and look at it that way if I know the rest of that of the mock URL.
Oh, sure.
It's just cutting it
Yeah.
off there. And then
Okay.
when the time comes, maybe we can spell my name correctly, which it's been not spelled
Oh.
correctly the past few years, which is no big deal, but as long as we're redoing it, I thought we'd put my name in right.
Which is what, Cecilia? Let me put it in the usual.
the way it is on the screen here, on the Zoom screen, so CECILIA.
ILIA.
Fred, will you scroll down a little? I'm curious.
Yeah,
Most of the time.
You know what
name gets mixed up.
And what's the rest of the URL, the mock URL, so I could sort of screen through and look at, you know, look at that.
I'll email it to you. Okay?
Oh, you can put it in the chat.
Yeah, just throw in the chat.
Oh, it's in the
Well,
chat?
I gotta get to my chat, that's my problem.
We're gonna throw it in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
See, I shrunk it.
Well, actually, once you stop sharing your screen,
Yeah,
Brad, we could put it in the chat.
okay.
And there is a tick warning right at the top, actually.
It's really awesome, by the way. Thank you so much for all the work.
No problem.
I should probably jump, we got like 4 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I jump into
Yeah, that'd be great.
sharing about our wildlife stewardship meeting? Cool. Daniel was nice enough to host Sam and Brad and I at his house with the goal of coming up with a standard set of criteria for pushing forward a trail plan. And we did a little review of what we know and what best practices are, and we're all on the same page about using sensitive habitat as the main guiding layer for where not to put trails. And trying to get a buffer, ideally 300 to 200 yard buffer, but
Yards?
meters,
100 meters.
100, okay, yeah, and really looking for ways to leave sections of the forest trail free. And looking at the map, the reduced trail plan does a good effort at that. The things that we weren't totally on the same page with were where the fewer trails would be condensed, and what would happen with current trails that aren't going to be maintained in the future. And so, and the differences in opinion were more trail condensed at the bottom of the forest close to Route 2 versus a linear corridor going all the way up, threading between the sensitive areas. And Brad was advocating for more trails towards the bottom, and I think that Sam and Daniel and I were more in favor of a linear corridor that stretches across the forest, so going up and connecting to Jericho trails. And then the other one was what happens with these old logging trails. And by having a specific trail, and this kind of played into the dilemma about the trails up above the power lines, where there all are a bunch of logging trails, and do you leave those open but not maintain them, or say, no, there is one trail that is for use there, everything else is off limits. That is habitat that's gonna be human free. And so I think they'll probably be
First humans.
yeah, dispersed humans, but to what extent do you encourage it? I guess. And so those were sort of the hanging things that we'll probably need to vote on, but I think general agreement on leaving large sections human free, like condensing human impact, and really using the natural areas or the sensitive habitat and the rare biological communities as the guide for where not to go.
I'd only say, just to clarify, that I was advocating, yeah, more trails in the south, but all trails in the south, really, and leaving the north the way it is now, open public access up there, much as people want, on the existing, woods, roads, trails, footpaths, whatever. And then concentrating on trail development in the south where it's easier and less impact on all the sensitive stuff up there. It's just tough to put something in there with the kind of buffers that, science is telling us we ought to have if we really want to protect wildlife up there. It's tough, if not impossible to put it in, especially with sinuosity said is true about the rugged terrain over on the far east. So anyway, but it was a great discussion, I thought, 2 hours.
When you were talking about did you say reduced?
Sorry, can you speak up, Listen? Sorry. Can you speak a little louder?
He mentioned a reduced trail plan, and I didn't know exactly what you meant by that.
Yeah, there was a trail plan that came after Caitlin met with the select board that designates a couple of, it took away several trails. And designates a couple as pedestrian
I'm
only.
familiar with that, I
Yeah.
just didn't know
So,
what you meant by that.
That was our basis, and so I think what we came to was that's a good starting place. How can we move things to best avoid those sensitive areas? And so that was what we were looking for. Rather than swinging out and around them, which seems like it would in net leave less of the forest untraveled. That corridor through the middle seems like a possibility to achieve a best distance from the areas.
Great, thanks. And we're gonna return back to this discussion.
Yeah,
Well, I don't wanna,
We're over time by a few minutes.
which is
Yes,
right on
Trying
time.
to-
since we're operating under a new paradigm, if we can have more people, I would love to jump in and be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vision statement.
So, just a question, Chase, you mentioned a plan that identifies some trails as pedestrian only.
Yeah, I think you had it on that website update, right? I thought I recognized it.
I gotta go back and find that. It may have been one of those, yeah. Would that have been the new trail plan, the one with the two coming down?
Yeah,
Sunshine?
I think that, and it's the one that designates Dana's Climb. And I thought Urbanic stays,
Yeah.
anyone can use it.
Oh, okay.
And that's on a map somewhere, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, where does that live? Good
We
question.
I presented on it, what, 3 months ago? We talked about it, we showed it, everyone got a copy of it. I'm sure I can find and send out the electronic form of the map, I'll look for it right now. Well, I'll look for it as we transition into Brad. Talking about the vision statement,
Oh, yeah.
so I'll pass that to you.
All right, let me try to see if I have that.
I wish we started this segment by telling everyone you actually ordered calzones and they're getting delivered right now.
DoorDash. All right, let me try to do my chat again. I'm sorry, I've got like 15 screens here open. All right, share screen. It's good. And I think that's it. Yeah. All right, get that out of my way. Okay, so last time we met, we looked at this statement, got some great comments. In the interim, I got a couple more comments from one person that I've tried to incorporate. So what you see here. Okay. So I split. Most of the comments were just in the beginning. Cecilia had a great overall comment that I tried to work in. The original one talked about, used we and our, and she said, who is we, who is ours? So I tried to work around that and clarify that. Those are some of the things you see highlighted in yellow there. the we's and ours. Daniel, I think it was wondering, do we need to describe what thriving is? And when we say thriving ecosystem, and then Ian was wondering about, did we need the word environmental in front of education? So I looked at it, thought about that, and I realized, I think that first sentence, we don't really even need the thriving ecosystem and where all these things coexist is somewhat redundant with the second sentence. So I kind of merged them. Which you see off to the right in that box, that's like the current suggestion for revision. Where it's the town of Richmond, make that clear right up front, who's talking here. Will use sustainable management, we can read that. And it picks up the same ideas. I got rid of environmental. And then it's kind of condensed it a little more. And then moving down, the only other thing was, again, to clarify whose voice this is. I don't know if you can read that, but it just says, instead of our mission, it's the town of Richmond's mission in managing the forest.
May I comment?
Is to, there's a verb with some, yeah, go for it.
Well, I think when we saw it last time, I was hoping for a little bit more brevity, but now that I've seen it without that first sentence, it lacks a little poetry, man.
Oh, no.
You know, that first sentence is really nice. You know, thriving ecosystem of conservation, education, and
Yeah.
recreation harmoniously coexist. I mean, that's a nice sentence.
Well, it's got some, yeah, coexistence.
Yeah.
So Brad,
I had the same thought, I was like, I could see both working, and I was like,
Yeah.
ooh.
I like brevity, but the second one is more sort of mechanical, and the first one is,
Yeah,
it's got
it
a
is.
little bit of lyricism to it, you know?
Yeah, more just the facts.
On the other hand, I noticed that you have that first sentence on the website landing page in a green
Oh.
bubble.
Cause I did, yeah, I got to that box after.
So if that's the first thing you see, I would be satisfied, and we can, I mean, then we maintain a little poetry, and then when you get into the mission, then it's more mechanics, and that's fine. You know what I mean, like, as long as it's visible, it's really the punchiest piece of the whole thing.
That's an idea, yeah. It's not really part. It's part of the vision.
Yeah,
I think they get rid of that.
yeah,
And just float it there.
it's just,
Yeah, I think of that.
it's just a statement.
just clarify what comes in the packet is different. But what you're showing on the screen here, I think it's just an implementation of
Oh,
what the version.
yeah, because as it started to develop, things changed from.
Yeah, so there's maybe no difference between what's in the content of what's in the packet.
Oh,
I'm showing
yeah.
It's a cleaned up, you're showing a cleaned up version.
Yeah. What's different is, what's in the packet is pretty much comments to the original with markups and revisions.
Yeah.
You don't see the proposed 520 bit. You're right, that's right. That's new, that's,
On the heading at the top, really.
yeah, and then I put that in.
This
too.
is, yeah.
That's right, yeah. It reflects those comments and the different things. It's more of a compilation of what was there. So, good point, yeah.
June, I really agree with what you were saying about taking that first sentence as the header, because I do think that. A vision statement in a management plan, it's okay if it's like a little bit dry, because it's kind of nuts and bolts, but I like that it preserves a sort of inspiring part in our language. And just because something isn't like in the vision statement, doesn't mean it can't be part of our language, so I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Right. Cecilia's got her hand up.
Yes, go ahead, Cecilia.
Sorry, it takes forever to unmute. I just thought the first sentence that we've been talking about, it has a lot of great things, but it has a lot of words. And so I didn't know if we could say, instead of the town of Richmond will use sustainable management practices to maintain yada, yada. Instead, can't we just say will sustainably manage the Andrews Community Forest for ecological integrity and contributions to its forest block while providing opportunities, da, 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 da. I'm not sure that it's so so just get rid of some of those words. I tried to put it in the chat, but I kind of mangled that. And then I'm not sure that people will understand what contributions to its forest block means. So I didn't know if we, to the surrounding forest, to the intact
Yeah.
forests of Vermont, or I'm not sure what would be better here, but something about it, what it is it's trying to be part of an intact forest, which is rare as we chop it up to put houses and other things in. So, yeah, just we might want to think about those 4 words and how that could be better.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm going to try and sign out now and run down to join you guys in person.
Okay,
Nice.
Come on down.
use your phone.
So I have one other thing, and I'm totally ready to be wrong here. This is not a hill I will die on whatsoever. But I have this like thing about language that says what people will think and feel that I bristle at. And I know this sentiment is like very common, but where it says by creating a model of responsible land management, generations of local residents visitors will connect with and enjoy nature. My thinking is always like residents, people, they do whatever they want. If they want to connect with nature, great. If they want to go rage, that's fine. If they want to burn off steam, that's fine. If they want to connect with their loved one, that's fine. Like they do whatever they want to do. And so I sort of default to language of like, I just wrote the thing, but by creating a model of responsible land management, the ACFC provides opportunities for generations of local residents to connect with and enjoy nature. Like we just provide something for people, they can have whatever experience they want to have in it. And so again, it's not like a hill I'm gonna die on or anything, because I think it is really good language, but that is like one of the things that
So say it again, Daniel.
I would say something like that first sentence is great, or first clause is great, by creating a model of responsible land management.
Okay,
Then you would say the ACFC, our committee, provides opportunities for generations, and then you just change the language, for generations of local residents and visitors to connect with and enjoy nature, to share in the forest stewardship, and to foster deep appreciation.
to do all that.
Yeah, so the language basically.
I got you. So the will connect that.
Yeah.
Forceful.
Yeah, it's like.
Yeah, right. Good.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
That's funny,
Like
because
that.
right as you were saying that, Daniel, Cecilia wrote in the chat, provide the opportunity to.
Wait, are you serious?
Really? I read it.
Oh, that's really funny. Okay, great.
Okay.
Do we need to, on the one on the right, do we need to introduce the committee? If we're gonna use that language to say something like the town of Richmond through the Andrews Community Forest Committee
No,
will, no?
it just gets bureaucratic.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
all right.
I mean, we're the town of Richmond. I think down below,
Well, it's a management vision, so we are kind of the managers, so if we could somehow create a link. Just about.
yeah,
Well, on the website, there is discussion of the committee, right? And about where we sit and what we do.
Yeah, it'll be, and in the management plan, it'll come in the next section of like the committee itself, but.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. But. I mean, we're part of the way the town of Richmond does all this stuff, but do we have to?
Maybe in the heading above. Maybe it's another line.
Oh, yeah, I mean, because this would appear in the management, plan, so the context would be.
Or maybe it says prepared by the Andrews Community Forest Committee or something. We have to create the link up above the 2 boxes, just, I don't know.
We got our official station.
Julianne, I like what you said about the poetry.
Yeah.
Like if this is gonna be your official vision statement, vision is supposed to be audacious.
Yeah,
Like, it's, even though you have a website, I wonder if we do want to preserve that. That vision that comes across.
yeah.
I mean, is this what people are gonna go look to when they want to say, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
Official.
Yeah, and if it's the first thing you're reading, you might say,
Yeah.
huh? Nice place.
Yeah, you may, come to it a long time after you've seen it the first line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can play with it, I definitely, incorporate these other ideas and,
Okay, Brad. I would say you're opening up to a lot of wordsmithing from everyone around you, so thanks. It's hard, I think it's really hard to
No,
write
that's
something and then everyone wants to wordsmith it.
well, it's the committee writing is not the best way to do these, but.
No, but
but
we
this
all
is
have our
okay.
styles too. and-
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. no,
So,
but these
Are you cool if I throw one more comment? in?
Oh.
I feel bad, because like, there's a lot of right ways to do this,
No.
That was all a preface to say, can I make one?
I should have seen that. I should've.
There are a lot of right ways, that's a, like Daniel said, you could be like, I don't like this suggestion, but, first sentence, the town of Richmond. Could it be redundant to say we'll use sustainable management practices? What if we just say, will maintain the Andrews Community Forests ecological integrity and contribution, because that is a sustainable management practice in itself.
It wasn't, isn't that what like Cecilia said?
No, she's saying sustainably managed.
Sustainable management, okay.
Right, but you're saying, you're right, you're describing,
Like,
showing rather than.
By maintaining ecological integrity, you are practicing sustainable management.
Right.
So what he said, the town of Richmond will maintain the Andrews Community Forest ecological integrity and contributions to its
To its, or something,
forest something,
yeah.
and then however you want it, but maybe we don't need to say sustainable management and then the things below.
Yeah. Try that, yeah. Get that up, town Richmond is sustainably managed. Yeah.
I was
so
suggesting-
you'd cut that. too.
Yeah, the town of Richmond
Yeah.
will, and then skip right down to maintain.
Yeah. I like that,
Yeah.
yeah, good idea.
Yeah, so going back to, I think to what I was saying, is there a need for just some comment, maybe under a new heading about how the mission is implemented, and that's where one would mention the easement, the select board, this committee, the BLT, as having responsibility for implementing this mission, or is that, but go somewhere else?
I was the vision of this would be, it would fit in front of those sections.
Yeah.
In the management plan.
I agree with that.
So they're coming, turn the page and
I don't get that.
it's not a standalone thing really,
Yeah.
Do we need a TikTok version of this too? Mission's vision statement where it's just a 30-second video and we're dancing and it can be embedded. Sure.
Yeah,
Do people still read?
maybe we can get somebody at Campbell's to do it. I wonder if
You,
Sandy.
you got some Campbell's Home students, right?
Absolutely, and teachers, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, well, for example, it would be fun to have, I mean, I know you're kidding, but I think it would be fun to have that list of species that you have on the main page, which is kind of dull and dry, but it would be super fun to have a bunch of fifth, sixth, and seventh graders reading out the species and having flashing pictures of what's up on there, and something more engaging like that. That'd be
Yeah,
fun.
that sounds really fun.
Sandy Ferry.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, yeah, Senior Ferry, exactly. She would jump at something like that, and she could probably use it as a teaching moment for her kids, because she's such a genius teacher.
Yeah, all kinds of connections, different parts of the curriculum. Yeah. Cool. Great, okay,
Thanks for doing that.
I'll take another whack at it, send it around, and if you have ideas then, let me know.
Well,
That
who you
makes this
send it
much
to?
lot more efficient, huh?
Who do you send it to?
The chairs.
The chairs, okay.
and then they distribute, right?
Well, you can send right to the group if you want.
Okay,
You
just
can-
don't write back to me.
Yeah, just don't say. Definitive
Well,
discussion.
so if somebody has a comment on it, that's right, they have to hold it to the next meeting. Don't they?
No,
Can they,
what they can do is we can't have a shared document.
Right.
But someone can like write on a document and then email it back to you,
1-to-1?
1-to-1. But it can't be a shared document that we all contribute.
Okay, okay.
Is it too much to ask that at the next one, we only edit things that we can't live with?
Yes.
Since this is like the third version of this?
Yep.
And I think at that point, then if
We will,
we could end it.
we will end it next.
Yeah.
meeting. Move on, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, thank you.
Thank you.
Really good ideas, I like them.
Great, thank you all. I'm gonna pass it over to Julie.
Okay, great. So, would you stop sharing, Brad, so I can share? Yeah. So we, let's see, Ian and Daniel asked me to talk about our hotspots document. And I got to look in,
File hotspots in there.
which are not hotspots, they are,
Please, and thank you.
what are they? Are they challenges? What are we deciding?
Sticking challenges.
Anyway, the things we haven't quite worked out yet. And I got to looking at, the document with the questions and then I got to looking at our, what were once called subcommittees, but now we're just loose affiliations of people working on things that had been assigned from the committee. And you know, me and Melissa and Ian spent a lot of time working on stuff and Chase and Caitlin, is there anybody else working on it? Okay, Chase and Caitlin spent a lot of time working on stuff and we made some documents. And I was looking through, okay, what is really the core of what we agree on and the core of the things that we still disagree on? You know, the document that had our sticking points was kind of long and convoluted. And if you look at the management plan and trying to tackle that thing at the same time, it's really difficult because we've all got different little sections to pick apart. I mean, we just spent 20 minutes picking apart a paragraph here and the management plan is how many pages?
15, anywhere between 15 and 300.
Anywhere between 50 and 300. So I was thinking, okay, there's got to be a way where we can talk about these things in a more succinct and direct way. And so, sifting through those documents, I came up with this list that I want to share with you all. I want to preface it by saying that with brevity comes a loss of precision, and with precision comes a loss of brevity. So, you know, there's a balance in here. I'm going to err on the side of brevity tonight, and what I would propose is that I'm gonna look through a list of things that I think that we agree on, and I think there are others that are not on there, but that would be fun to list. And I'm gonna list, hey, my father kids tables.
Yeah.
And then the list of things that I think we disagree on. It would be good to see if there are other things that are missing from that list that we can consolidate and work on in like a chunky, you know, this week we'll work on this month, or this meeting, that meeting, and so forth. So that was my preface to this document. Here goes. Here's what I think we agree on based on the works of the groups of people that we were working on before. So I originally started out with a list of 10 and then I went to 11 with some additions, but here we go. So, you know, we certainly want a monitoring plan that gives us the best idea of both use and impact. You know, we all want to keep the habitat as intact as possible. And how are we going to know if it remains intact and suitably intact? Hopefully a monitoring plan that we can check into and say, here's some erosion, here's some invasives. Once we saw these animals here, now we don't see them there, what's going on? You know, the parking lot is full, the parking lot is not full. We see this many people, we don't see this many people, you know, all the stuff that we should know and try to monitor to try to keep the forest as healthy as possible. All right, then there's some easy wins. I haven't heard anybody argue for horses, and I think they're out. I haven't heard anybody argue in favor of e-bikes. The e-bikes are a whole topic in the mountain biking world, generally speaking, outside of this conversation. I think it's an easy one to just, through a precautionary principle, say, no e-bikes. And we can fight that battle if anybody wants to fight it, but I haven't heard anybody really make the case that we should allow e-bikes.
Well, the easement says no motorized, so.
Well, but there's a question of whether an e-bike is a motorized thing.
We can define it as.
I think we can just say, we don't even need to,
The motor is the motor.
Okay, well, I mean, I agree with you, but I think state statute says different things about what an e-bike is, and it's a whole gray area that benefits
On
some
the state
people.
line, it's our property, so we can decide.
Yeah, we could say,
Yeah.
we have the right to say no e-bikes as far as I know.
Sure.
So we can say that. Above the power lines is where we get into the sensitive, parts of the map. I was looking at the heat map that you were talking about and some other ones that are on Ian's website, and I think will eventually make their way onto our website. And there's a lot of sensitive stuff up there. And so since the primary trails are gonna be below the power lines anyway, we can just say no dogs above the power lines and leashed below the power lines. And then that's less of a threat to wildlife. I think we are in agreement that we should have some trails that are exclusively for hiking and walking, i.e. non-mechanized recreation. And the TSP has a proposal for exactly where, and you shared a map a couple of months ago that had that proposal that was on there. So that's a win, because there were some concerns at the Camels Hunt meeting a year ago that there needed to be some things where it was just gonna be exclusively for walkers. And I think that's an easy one. No need parking, right? So parking is sort of a passive way to control flow. We want people to use the forest, but we want a reasonable flow of traffic onto the forest land. And I think by not expanding any parking or not entertaining any motions for expanding parking, that is one kind of passive measure of keeping traffic limited in the forest, though always welcome, so long as there is parking. Of course, anybody's welcome to bike or walk, right? Okay, I think we all want education on indigenous significance and uses of the land. And Cecilia, you've done a little research on that. I think that's something that is good for everybody. I think we all agree there's no net use. At one point, Chase, you were trying to argue for some flexibility on that one, but I think the easiest thing is no net use. Yeah.
When will we discuss that point? Because I have a couple of points to add.
Oh, great. I would like to just go through it. It's actually kind of short, and then I'd love to hear what everybody has to say. I'd love to add and subtract and modify as we went.
Cool.
So if there are trails above the power lines, I think that we agree that there should be closures in the late fall through spring. I was at Sue Morris's presentation on the impact of trails and humans in the forest, and she talked a lot about energy budgets for animals and when they are stressed. And I had always presumed it was in the winter. She said actually spring, when they're coming out and looking for new food, is the really highest stress time. And so, we have a couple of proposals for when we might close the trails on the higher side, if there are trails up there. The more limited one was December 15th through April 1st. There's another more expansive version that says as soon as regular deer season opens, which is sometime in November. Through May 1st, we might get a break, and that covers the bulk of early spring.
One addition to that, when we met with Andrea, she was saying a deer population management strategy that's been really successful is really encouraging bow hunting, because bow hunting allows the killing of does,
right?
And they are the harvest that's linked with better population control. And so favoring hunters during bow season is a good
But
strategy.
we're not gonna decide or getting hunters to come in. We don't, either they have a hunting license or not.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she felt like within the hunting community, there was a strong knowledge of where trails were closed for hunters, and they really favored those areas. I don't know, that's how I interpret it.
Well, I think any of these has a lot more detail that we could get into.
Yeah, totally.
Sure. So that's an issue one though, and I've heard that mentioned in the past, and I forgot to note it on here, but. I think we all think there should be a limit. I mean, we all want as much traffic as is reasonable up there, right? And we all want to protect the forest as much as is necessary. And so, no matter where the trails are, I think we all agree there should be a limit to the overall number of trails. This is not an infinite amount of space that we can put trails into, and so we need to figure out what the limit of the number of trails and trail mileage is in the forest. Those are the things that I've identified that I think we agree with. There's a few things that we don't agree on, I think, and the main one, I believe, is the trail loop in the northeast quadrant. There in that second proposal that Airwood and Sinuosity came back with, they had made some adjustments to the trail to keep it as far away as possible from sensitive areas. But depending on the zone of influence, the ZOI you prefer, some parts of the trail are entirely out. The central question I think is like, what is good enough? And I know that some people have expressed a preference for like no exceptions to any incursions into the ZOI that you would want to have, which we haven't totally agreed to yet, but whatever it is, there may be imperfect sections of the trail loop that will take you into that. And you know, I think others think that the trail proposal has considered the sensitive places. So, you know, are there other ecological criteria to consider for trail building? Sounds like you guys started talking about that at the last meeting that you had that you just reported on. So that's already working, which is fantastic. And my question here is it ever appropriate to make exceptions to those criteria? You know, does everything have to be perfect? Do we need to get pretty close? Is it more about the best effort possible in a particular place? And then the second issue of connectivity between the proposed trails and basically the Sip of Sunshine Trail. You know, David Sunshine says he's happy to connect. There's not any sensitivity on the ecological heat maps up there, but you and I were talking, Brad, and you said, well, but you can't get there without going through some sensitive areas. So that is those are things that we need to talk about. There may be others, but there's a few things that I think are important, but that we don't quite know how to resolve, and I don't think we can resolve them in this group. For example, what kind of zoning regulations does the trail plan need to comply with? Melissa did a lot of work with others, talking to Tyler, Makia, and others. You know, will the DRB want to review a trail plan? Tyler Makia seems to think so. The DRB needs to determine that for itself, of course. We have this sticky problem of if there are going to be trails over the power lines, a lot of that land has a gradient of greater than 20 degrees, and so what does the DRB think of that? There's been talk about an engineering site plan and so forth. We don't quite know what the DRB is going to rule on that. If they rule that there's a site plan necessary, then we need to get an engineer if we want to build trails there, which is expensive and so on and so forth. So I believe this to be the map of things we agree on, areas of convergence and divergence, we call it in my business. Happy to get comments and input and.
And is that in our related files?
It's not, I sent it everybody, so I sent it when Ian and Daniel asked me to, maybe facilitate the second. I said, well, I don't know, there's a lot, where will we start? I don't know where to start. And so I sat down and started thinking about this, and this is what I came up with. I emailed it to you all, on Saturday or Sunday maybe. And so here it is. I'm happy to share it again. And clearly, because it wasn't warned or anything, we can't make any decisions about it. But I'm happy to take edits and suggestions, and maybe we can come back to it in a further meeting, depending on what you guys think. So, what do you think, Ray?
I have a dog comment.
Yes.
We may all agree that dogs should not be above the power lines.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of folks with dogs that want to be out cruising with their dogs.
Yeah.
So we need to be prepared to defend that if that's and get some pushback, I think.
Yeah.
Because people are already familiar with going for a split a dog.
Yeah.
Or accustomed to do
Yeah,
that.
so above the power line, if we say no dogs, we need to defend it and be prepared to take some heat for it.
Yeah.
That's the.
Sam has his hand raised, but I did want to know, Melissa, did you know that Audubon rules also prohibit dogs? Is it?
No,
Is that
they have leashed dogs on their lower trails that, are by the sugar house.
Yeah.
And then the upper trails that are above their educational center are.
No, okay, so there's.
There's the Vermont next door.
No.
How would that interplay with hunting community
Allowing dogs?
or not allowing?
Most hunters don't use dogs.
Right, bear hunters are the
Yeah,
exception.
they're very few.
Yeah, okay.
Birds too, but.
And birds, but it's not really a bird hunting habitat.
Not really.
Right, yeah.
I just wanna let Sam had his hand up, so.
Yeah, Sam, jump in.
Hey, thanks. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on the dog thing as well. I think another thing to consider is if there's gonna be trail connectivity and there's no dogs over the power lines, there's probably gonna be pushback specifically related to that as well. Because that would be an argument for them. People wouldn't be able to use one trail to another if they have a dog with them.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in ACF. I have a dog. You know, I've kind of thought this over and have come to terms with like this probably is the best decision not to allow the dogs over the power lines, as much as you know, it pains me to say that because I have enjoyed the forest with my dog. But that was one of the biggest things for me. Like there's a little loop that I take back to Valley View, or used to take back to Valley View, that just goes up above the power lines a little bit, which would then, you know, be off limits, which, you know, in some ways changes my ability to move around the area, you know, somewhat significantly in terms of making loops. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm okay with no dogs over the power lines. But I've had to, you know, kind of think about it a lot. And I'm also, you know, I guess maybe on the more conservation minded side of things. And I
Yeah.
think that there are definitely going to be a lot of members of the public that might be frustrated if this is supposed to be a decision that represents the town and not just the committee. So I just wanted to bounce off what Wright was saying about dogs.
No, that's a great illustration.
Yeah, Sam, that's a good thought. I mean, I'm thinking if the real goal is to not impact these sensitive habitats and we're having trails that thread between them. I mean, my thought is like, do people actually leash their dogs?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then, like, the whole trail dance is for nothing if the dog's just ripping through the forest. But I don't know if there's some sort of interpretive material we can create that would stress like, we want to trust dog owners to pass through here with dogs, and like, this is right on the edge of a sensitive habitat and it's not appropriate for dogs to be running off leash. I mean, I would have this fight with my family when I was, with their dogs, and we'd go hiking and I'd be like, you guys, we're like in the alpine zone and you're letting the dog, and they're like, it's not a big deal. Stop being
It's only
so.
one dog.
Yeah,
That's it, that's exactly
alright, I'm not gonna like fight with my family,
I
but
think-
like, you guys.
Yeah, I think that's a good argument for no dogs though, right? Because, you know, I see people on the town green or at, you know, the parks in Richmond with dogs off leash and they're not supposed to, right? You know, like people, when no one can see them in the woods, are definitely not going to have their dogs on the leash, you know, all the time. You know, that happens quite frequently. So it could be that's you know, one of the strongest cases for no dogs at all, because if we know they're always going to be off leash and some people are going to think they're the exception to the rule, then, you know, that's the case for it right there, that dogs are going to get too close to the sensitive areas.
Yeah, Sam, you know, I've seen real success over at the Audubon. I've been here frequently. I have a dog. I think people do generally keep their dogs leashed on the lower trails by the sugar house. And I have never seen anyone with a dog on the upper trails, although I have seen deer and other wildlife on the upper trails.
Right.
As well as lots of.
Off leash?
Minutes before this meeting, I allowed them.
Yes.
And then I don't know.
Oh, you saw a dog. on the leash?
Yeah, just driving back. Trying to have money.
So Nancy has.
Yeah,
her hand
Nancy's
up.
trying to get in there.
Make sure she gets.
Yeah, thank you. I love, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great.
I love dogs. Dogs love to run. Some dogs need to run to stay healthy. And so I agree with what people have said. I think probably the pushback from a lot of people is going to be high to have any restrictions on dogs. And, you know, Vermont is the first state in the country with the highest per capita ownership of pets. So it's it's true. It's going to happen here for sure. All that being said, I guess the point I want to make is, and I think it's for the committee to really talk about, certainly in relationship to dogs, there's very clear research that dogs and wilderness do not exist well together. That's not an if, and it goes beyond, I think, normally people just think, well, because I can't have my dog there because it might chase the wildlife away. Well, that's true, but it's not the only effect they have. They also leave scents throughout the forest, throughout the trails, throughout wherever they run. And those scents of dogs also drive wildlife away. So there's a fair amount of research that shows that it's a bad idea from an ecological point of view. And I think for this committee, it's sort of a question, whether it's dogs or other issues that you have talked about and you'll continue to talk about, is, you know, you need to think about, I guess I'm a skeptic that ecological protections can really stand up over time to the politics of recreation. And having a dog when you recreate is one piece of what I mean by the politics of recreation. But that also includes that recreation is fun, it's convenient, it makes money, and there's a relentless drive for expansion precisely because it is fun and convenient and makes money. You know, it's a circular thing. So that's sort of an issue. And I guess that's what drives me, whether it's dogs or statements in the vision statement, going back to earlier in the conversation tonight, that I think whatever gets done, whether they are rules in the management plan or they are topics in the vision statement, right as we left that conversation, I was looking at the vision statement again and I thought to myself, wow, it's very human oriented. It's all about what the people want to get, you know, and that's understandable. There's no balance here. You know, I think that use of balance, the word balance between recreation and ecology, is really a false one. We're sort of kidding ourselves. Who's on the committee? It's not the bears and the bobcats. It's all of us. It's all the humans. And so you are making the decisions. It's the people who are going to make the decisions for the wildlife and the habitat. And that's a huge responsibility in my mind, because there'll always be humans, whether it's mountain biking or hiking or dog walking. There's always going to be people who drive their fun, you know, because it is fun. They're absolutely right. It's up to this committee. I guess I'll end by saying, I think it's up to this committee to decide how strong should these ecologic protections be, because they're going to have to stand up over time to change the politics of recreation, which are very forceful in many different ways. And I think the dogs are just one example of that. And even if you get some, you know, backlash from that, if this is what the science is showing, and my understanding from a while ago reading about dogs, it's pretty clear, then maybe you got to stand up and say, sorry, no dogs. And I love dogs. So that's
I love dogs too. I mean, that is why I think
you don't love the wildlife, and really you gotta have somebody speaking for them, because they cannot speak for themselves. You're all human and I'm human, and we all want to do these things and have our fun in the forest. But boy, we gotta bend over backwards to say, we are the self-imposed guests in somebody else's home and environment. And what with our fun are we doing to their home? So I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, very inspired, Nancy. Thank you. And I do think you bring up a good point. I mean, ultimately enforcement here, I think is gonna depend mostly on our ability to create a culture that believes in the things that we're trying to promote rather than a warden at the, at the base or anything, because that's never gonna happen. Yeah, go ahead.
I have 4 quick questions.
Yeah.
One, I'm not a mountain biker. Do people actually bike with their dogs on a leash, and is that safe?
No,
No, okay.
Yeah.
they might have their dogs off leash.
2, adjacent properties, is there dogs allowed at BYCC?
That's a good
On
question.
there?
I would think yes. There's probably a leash policy. I could look up.
Okay, and then what anybody would be connecting to in Civic Sunshine, I'm guessing there's no policy about dogs.
Not as far as I know.
Because it's private,
Oh, yes,
unless
you're
the
right.
landowner.
Yeah. However, I will say this, to get to Simple Sunshine, there's no parking, so you would have to run with your dog, or ride with your dog on the road to get there. So
Maybe you have to carry.
You know where
maybe
people
you have to
park?
have-
Julian, is people park at the bottom of the dip on Southview
Okay,
and then walk up Old Jericho Road.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, it is still a walk.
All right, and so then, is there a dog park anywhere else in town besides Volunteers Green? Or is there an effort to create that? Because dogs do need to run, people want, I mean, I think it's totally legit.
River Shore, you see a lot of people there. The River Shore Trail.
Here's that, oh, yeah,
Which is also fragile habitat.
yeah, well.
Well,
that's-
yeah.
It
Something
just,
happens.
it
I mean,
seems almost
yeah.
anything public now has been turned into a dog park, no matter where I go.
Yeah.
The best one is in Underhill at the Mills Riverside Park. They have an off-leash dog area and trails that are
And
specifically.
there's in Underhill.
Mhm, it's called Mills Riverside.
So if we're gonna say this is special, no dogs here, then maybe we should join arms with whoever is trying to find a dog park.
I love that.
Because I have heard that, I don't have a dog.
That'd be an interesting thing to bring back to Trails Committee too.
Yeah,
And then the other thing is how to, I see this as a compromise, sort of like, because these are fragile areas, the main impact that humans have through trails, I mean, is frankly, they're dogs. And so, when they talk about, the impact on wildlife near trails, it isn't just the bikers and we buy, it's the dogs like running around. So it's sort of a compromise. Okay, we can have trails up there, pedestrian trails, bike trails, but you can't bring your dog. I see that as, do other people think of it that way? And would that be a way to?
That's
to
not
pitch
what
it?
the research says. I mean, it's people.
I don't-
They see people 400 feet. I mean, that's what,
Oh, yeah, they see people,
there's so much
but
influence.
when they,
But they think we're predators too.
yeah. but
Even
when-
a super predator, actually.
It raccoons the.
Never mind, but it's,
No.
yeah, I'm sure there are some that have looked exactly at people, but there are others that have said, well, we're only counting people and we're doing trails that people use. But, the dog impacts, as Nancy was saying, are just really well documented and well off trail as far as the figures go. So are we viewing that as a compromise, and if so, do we present it like that? Like, given there are these sensitive areas, but we still want to make it available for some people, but we just can't have dogs in that park.
Well, it also,
Otherwise, we say, if it's a problem, then we won't build any trails up there.
would help to wherever it's possible, to put an explanation in. And actually for the human restrictions too, whatever, or however we land on those, is explaining why, because like you're saying exactly right about the chasing or Nancy was, the chasing isn't just the only problem. It's, they leave scent behind. The critter comes across that scent hours later and goes, holy God, I gotta get out of here.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it'd be worth a good opportunity or a good effort at interpretive material. Cause it's worked with trail closers in the mountain bike community. People really respect them because everyone really knows that erosion happens when trails get ridden when they're really muddy.
Yeah.
And you get shamed, like not, people don't yell at you, but you'd be embarrassed to be out on a closed trail as like a member of the town.
I have actually yelled at people in Andrews Fort that had loose dogs that were running amok.
Yeah.
And they were mad at me, and they're like, well, and I'm like, it says you have to have, village property, you have to have it on a leash, and these were like nasty dogs, they were ones that like run you down, and And she's like, oh, I forgot my leash. What do you expect me to do? Go home for it? And I'm like,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
on a totally like anthropocentric level, I've been bitten by a dog while cross-country skiing in a leashed area and like bitten hard.
Yeah.
And it is really frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, so like,
The town of Richmond has a dog ordinance that says dogs must be on a leash or under voice control, which crosses the.
and we are out of time. so-
On private property.
Real quickly,
Yes,
on the night use,
night use, yeah.
can we just add something without special permission or
Yes,
something?
right.
Because, two things. One, there was, I'm thinking of the, shoot, it's called the Nature Center in Montpelier. They did some work with tribes, and one of the things that, and they also do night owl bandings and like special events. And the indigenous people that we talked to were pleased that there was a place they could do night ceremonies. It isn't every night, you know, it's not camping out overnight, but there's some things we might want to do. It's like
Yeah.
have a family's comment party or something, so just.
Totally.
Or the amphibian breedings, no
Yeah.
vernal pools.
Dan has a comment.
Yeah, thanks for those thoughts. I think, first of all, thanks for putting this together, it's really nicely done.
Great,
It's
thank
so
you.
helpful to pull all these ideas together. On number 6.
Yeah.
The TSP, for exact, I'm not sure we all agree exactly where the trails are gonna go based on the existing TSP and just a bigger picture with the science behind this. I really think that Meredith Naughton's article has really been shown to be the standard best practice for this whole question that we're struggling with here.
Yeah.
And when she talks about identifying sensitive areas and avoiding them, consolidating trails, I think in large part for these reasons, that you can't police it, so that's why you.
Yeah.
And I just don't know about the idea of, the linear consolidation, to me, doesn't really make sense. Like, I think the whole idea of consolidating trails is to create areas that don't have something sneaking through them because of the impacts. I kind of like Brad's idea of consolidating more trails and maybe fixing the trails that we have, that a lot of which are in pretty bad repair, that people we know are using, like the ones that go up to the meadow, what's it called?
Davis.
Meadow
Meander.
meander, like in the winter, it's great, but a lot of the year, it's all very muddy. And people are using those trails, so why aren't we like fixing up what we have, make them really nice, consolidating stuff? So identifying sensitive areas, I mean, for Naughton, he's like the expert on this, identify sensitive areas, consolidate, avoid. I think we should be, if we're, like, why wouldn't we be following? I guess that's my question, is why wouldn't we be following that practice?
Yeah, I have an answer. I thought about this a lot. And this is sort of where I've landed is that we, so we do have trails above the power line. Obviously, they're old skid trails that are eroding and they're in bad shape. And people use them, which is, it is what it is. They're there. And I think of the scenario in which we didn't have those trails. And I think that's a very different scenario where we have sort of forest that does not have human like trail access, but that's not the case. We like already have trails up there. And I see us having the ability to have like a both and situation, which is we can like close down those trails. The trails that are like poorly designed, they're not accessible. The average person is like not gonna feel comfortable walking up there and like, is this even a trail? This is super wet. But we have the ability to say, let's consolidate it into one single trail that's more accessible for more people, right? So like the average person can go out there and have a really nice experience and feel confident in where they're going and, like staying on the trail and the rules. And in effect, what we do is we reduce the amount of dispersed of people up above the power line, like they're not on multiple different trails on old skid trails, they're on one singular trail. And so we reduce actually the overall mileage, but we have a trail that's both more accessible and funnels people into one single trail. And I think that, I'm going by the charge of the management plan, which is a lot about increasing accessibility and about providing an experience for humans to have recreation in the outdoors. And so that's one way that I see that we can kind of have a both and is I agree with Dan, there's trails that we should fix up it, but I think that some of those public power lines, those aren't fixable trails because they're never built as trails in the first place. And so is there a way that we can have we can make that whole situation better by closing down the ones that are really inaccessible to people and poorly built with one that is accessible, better built, and avoids the sensitive areas?
I was
Just to clarify,
I was talking about fixing trails. That are-
Oh, just below, okay.
Yeah, the existing ones below.
Nothing, Melissa.
We're over time on this.
okay, that's what Sam wants to get in there. Maybe we just do a round of, Melissa, Sam, and Cecilia, and then we decide what we're gonna do with this, if anything.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah, so mine is back up. I've been trying to jump in,
Yeah.
but have not been able to, so
Sorry.
I'm going to scroll back up to the connectivity. If we could, and,
speaking of connectivity, not getting a jumper.
not moving, okay.
Dan, you had it up, right? You were just doing that.
That was true.
I was thinking you could read it.
Maybe I'll, you know what, I'll stop
That's
sharing.
okay, you don't have, I can just.
But yours is gonna be further. No, Dan's got it. Do you wanna read?
I just,
Go ahead, Melissa, you can just.
this has been a hard meeting to get a comment.
I know.
on.
Go ahead.
Okay, could we please, consider adding to that, the, deeded access,
So, say more about that?
deeded access question from Silver Sunshine.
I have an update on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
There,
it's not on that. That's why what
oh,
I was.
okay, yeah. There is, as part of the conservation easement on David's land, there is access guaranteed. It doesn't guarantee that exact trail will be there, and he is interested in putting something together. So he wants to work on it.
So there is, or he wants to.
There is current dispersed access, so it's that people will always have access to that property.
Does it have does it have a conservation? easement?
Yeah, on the, I think through Forest Legacy,
Okay.
and then the state easement,
For dispersal.
and he is open and interested in crafting his own long-term guarantee for the trail, and he said, as a lawyer, I'd want to do it, so let me look into it.
Cecilia, does that want to help you speak up?
Yes.
Yeah, my question was,
That was
my
the-
comment was just following up on Daniel's, I was gonna add to this list under. We don't have agreement, but maybe we do. What do we do with the existing forest roads? There are roads there and we haven't really counted them in the mileage, considered them in the management plan. And what you're saying is exactly what needs to happen. We have to consider them as being there and do we want them or not to be changed into the add them in. How does that work with the whole trail plan? So just considering existing forest roads as in the trail management plan and would be perfect.
Sam has his hand up. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments about the closures, like the date range and also sort of the definition of closure. So one, Chase, I don't know if you mentioned this, but Chase had mentioned being more inviting of bow hunters. That's something that we talked about in the wildlife stewardship working collection of people. And she had specifically mentioned being inviting to bone hunters, which would mean potentially closing trails in like mid-October. So I don't know if that's something that the committee wants to consider, but I figured I would at least just mention it because that's sort of what she was referring to. Like if you want to help control the deer population, promote a healthier forest, you know, inviting hunters into the forest, knowing they're not going to run into somebody in, you know, mid to late October when they're bow hunting would be the way to do that. Second thought on that same point is how are we defining closure? You know, because like, I know as it stands, the easement states like, you know, dispersed use is allowed. And what does the language look like there? Is it better to just not really go into it? Because there's like sanctioned, you know, sanctioned use versus like, you know, like, oh, we're not gonna sanction people's use of this during this period, or like it's strictly prohibited. And, you know, I think there's a difference. And I don't know if that's worth outlining somewhere, depending on what the committee wants the activity to look like in the winter, because like, it's a fun place to be in the winter, but if we're really trying to keep, you know, that upper section above the power lines completely cordoned off so that the animals aren't running around expending their energy, then maybe there does need to be stronger language for what closure means that sort of supersedes the dispersed use being allowed sort of anywhere on the property. So I figured I would just point that out because I don't think it's well defined, and maybe it should be.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep.
I was just gonna follow up on old logging trails, at least on our property. If we have a logging trail that we really don't want utilized by the public, we'll drop a tree or two.
Yeah.
And unless there's erosion that we need to go and correct, there's gonna be blowdowns. And it takes care of itself.
Yeah.
You can still climb around and walk around and enjoy it, but it's a little more difficult, so you tend to go with trails that are maintained.
We have to recognize we're not got a clean slate, we've got dispersed access, and a lot of people are taking advantage of that. Of seasons that can go in the winter, you see the volume of footprints and dog prints indicating how much dispersed use of existing roads and so on. And people do go hunting. If you stop by during hunting season, you'll see a lot of activity. So
right,
yeah, we haven't got a clean slate.
Didn't give you a tough time about cleaning up those logging roads.
No, you can.
So co-chairs, sorry, go ahead.
Well, just, if the idea is that we're allowing hunting during that time, then you need to say the trails closed except the hunters, for one. And for two, do we really all have agreement on that, that it's closed all winter long, basically? And because I think this is gonna fall into the same thing as the dog category. People are gonna be like, what? You know, you can log on snow in January and February, why can't I go walk?
And you can ski all over the place,
Right.
or snowshoe all over the place through whatever habitat. That's the tricky thing, is if the trail's defined.
Yeah.
Then,
And then are we telling them
And
that
winters
you have
is-
to be off trail in the winter if you're
right,
there?
that's the tricky thing.
So,
Especially if the trail threads through sensitive habitat, so off trail means they're going.
but
into
what
habitat.
we're saying is the forest is closed north of the power lines, except to hunters. And that May, I mean, April is still mud season, so I
Yeah.
assume it'd be closed mud season, trails.
I mean,
I'm not sure
that's-
that belongs in we're in agreement that it's gonna.
I think trails would probably follow the same criteria as all the other trails, except for like defined hunting and breeding closures where they'd be monitored for conditions. One,
I mean, I think. I'm remember back to Sue Morrison, she said, you know, the main avenue for intervention in the forest are trails, right? And if you have a dispersal rule, you're less likely to get a higher volume of people because people are just less likely to bushwhack off the trail. I think it's further. So, and again, talking about compromises, you know, like the forest is for public use. I mean, it's a public forest. It's a town forest. It's not a perfect conservation place. But as a way to maximize the possibility of giving the animals as much of a rest as possible, if there's no trail access, I think dispersal is gonna be probably a lot less dense than any trail use that we'll get, which I don't actually think it's gonna be that dense in the first place, but I think that was the logic, I think. I don't know if that has any.
Yeah,
I mean, when I think about like probably one of our top 3 charges in the main plan of the committee, it is to provide equitable access.
Yeah.
And I think if I think about what does Richmond need, the last thing I think it needs is another playground for people who already know how to navigate around in the woods, which is exactly what dispersed travel is. It's for people who are experienced in the woods, who probably are out in the woods all the time, who know how to like navigate through all that stuff, and I think that is not a need in our community, but what a need is like a place where people have a level of accessibility, whether that's like a physical accessibility or where it's like a safe space where they know there's a trail plan, they can go there, and there's like a pedestrian only trail where they know there's not gonna be a lot of traffic.
On their way back.
Find your way back, that is a huge need in our community, and so I would have a hard time with just dispersed access, because we're not addressing the need that sort of like is identified.
Right.
But if we have 30 miles of trails, right, in our town easily, why can't people go to River Shore, Preston, maybe Cochrane, Safford? Well, all these others, I mean, so it's not like there's a street need.
I'm not saying like this is my personal opinion, I'm saying this is what the management plan says.
No, management says abide by the conservation.
No, the management plan is very clear that accessibility is part of our charge.
Yeah, that's one, yeah, you can't cherry pick that part. It also says protecting that place is part of our charge. So.
Yep, and that's why I think the balance is when you reduce the overall mileage by consolidating into one accessible trail, you both have accessibility and you limit your impact on wildlife.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, like, I think we could like run around in circles,
No,
but I just wanna make clear that I think the management plan does really talk about accessibility as being really important and for public recreation, and so I think we've talked a lot about like, what are the dog owners gonna say? I think we're also gonna get blowback if like, if there's only dispersed access, and people are like, well, who needs more, like, you know?
And I agree, I don't think we should encourage dispersed access at all, you know, I heard it differently, I heard it like, well, we just need to close the forest. If we're serious about it, and we don't say we're, only closing the trails, but don't worry, you can walk right next to them. That's,
Right.
we should just say the forest is closed for these reasons, X, Y, and Z, and I'm not 100% comfortable yet with what those reasons are. I know in general that, you know, you want to save the energy of animals that could be spooked, as people go by, well, and the winter is hardest on them, but, yeah, so I'm not quite there yet, and so I would have trouble explaining it to other people.
I just think if dispersed access is so bad though, why is it such a wildlife thing? I mean, this was our bugaboo, this over at Daniel's house for a working group that we had, but yeah, we came around to that, you know, I understand your theory, but the place is anything but a wildlife, you know, graveyard and desert up there. And I think wildlife and dispersed public access have worked really well up there.
Dispersed public access is a real small slice of everybody who's gonna be up there, so I don't feel like dispersed access is a big topic for us.
Well, I'm saying if we left, I may not be understanding. If we left the south, the north, basically as is status quo. People on, you know, current trails up there, I don't see any big change up there in the number of people or in the impacts. Because, you know, all the assessments and everything, it's pretty rich in wildlife. And we don't have to police it and figure out all this stuff. So I don't see that we would actually be improving things up there necessarily, but even by putting people on one trail, you know, with a 600-foot swath through there, we're gonna be spooking wildlife.
Where is the one trail that you?
Well, if we were,
glossed over that, you.
well, one
pointed
or
out
two,
that
well, there's two
There's two,
proposed.
but now you're saying one, where is
Well,
the,
One loop,
are you,
one quarter.
oh, you're talking,
Yeah, so it would actually be wider than 600 the way we have it now. It'd be 300 plus 300 plus whatever the spaces in between. But
there's a loop there right now, and now you're
Yeah.
saying,
yeah,
oh, no, not a loop,
yeah,
is that what you're saying?
but I'm just talking theoretically right now.
But
Because
yeah.
we don't have these parameters down yet. And we're talking,
I just want to understand yes or no. So what is currently proposed is a loop. And now you're saying what your new working group proposal is a single out and back trail? Is that what you're saying? No, that's not.
We kicked it around, but
Okay.
it's not we haven't.
Yeah, we didn't get
So
into
you're
that.
still putting forth.
Our idea really was around defining the best corridor to avoid those sensitive habitats. So
Mhm.
the current pair of trails follows one path that was thoughtfully put together. But if we really wanna move something over 30 feet to create the ideal buffer between habitats, that would be the goal, whether it's two trails fairly close together or one trail. We didn't get into that, but we were saying we felt like the best path forward was to condense the corridor.
So I think we're getting into some of the core topics here. I mean, you're hitting it all. I mean, this question about what does closure mean, do we want to encourage disbursement? What is the impact that any of this is gonna have on the forest and the creatures that live there? What do we want to offer in the way of access and make it as universal as possible for as much time as is reasonable? These are the core questions that I think, I mean, we should really spend some time on this. And at some point, and I mean, really, when we talk about these in these meetings, these are the best meetings for me. The ones where we actually get to talk about the substantive issues, even if we don't agree, I think we need to talk about that. And also think at some point we have to call the question and we have to take a decision and we have to vote and we have to stick with whatever the outcome of that vote is. Because, I mean, we have information, we all have to interpret it and there's different interpretations of that information. And we have to make a decision. We have to move on at some point. So my question to you, Chair, friends, is, what do you want to do, if anything, with this document and how you want to proceed?
Well, first I just want to say thank you, Julian, for facilitating. I think part of the reason I was a really successful discussion is because you brought a lot of thoughtfulness to the discussion, and I appreciate that, as we all do. I think that this is probably one of the more important conversations that we have had as a committee, and is a really good one for us to keep kind of moving on. I think I don't feel quite ready to like bring something yet to the group, and that something might be something about like, do we have dispersed access north of the power line, or do we have a single trail? Like that could be a motion, but I think we're still in that phase of like working through a lot of the what ifs here, and I think that's really healthy. So I could see us continuing this conversation next time, and I think we can do it, for the an hour or something like that, like we did this time, so we take care of some business and then we kind of jump back into this. How do folks feel about that? Yes, Cecilia?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and wondering about, if, you said, oh, there's this option and that option. If we had options that had pros or cons listed under them, then we wouldn't have to repeat ourselves with what our pros and cons are. Because I think we've gotten to the point where we're saying, things in different ways, but if we see our pros and cons up there and figure out which options are yes and, or which options are either or,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
And maybe Julian, you and I can work between this and next meeting, and we can like at least put together like some options, not set in stone, just to give us some guidance on that. Those could be visual like maps, and it could be a written document as well.
And even those pros and cons might reference some of the not literature or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll have our ducks in a row when we go to talk to the public about this.
Yeah.
And make decisions.
I think with these hot topics tonight, it should be more folks than just you two. I think it should be, maybe Brad and Melissa as well to really represent the committee.
Sure,
Yeah,
just, I'm fine with that, yeah.
Or me, I don't know if you want to do it, Brad, but.
I'm thinking something, but yeah.
Just so that there's, because
Sure.
this is the hot topic.
Yeah, I was,
It's good, this is all good, and it's slow, and it's a slow process, but it's good.
I'm happy to have more folks, Melissa, if you would be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be involved in something worthwhile, so,
This is not what class.
No, this is the meeting.
either, I don't know if your wildlife is done and you want to do this, or I'm happy to do that. It's, people are.
Yeah, I just want a broad representation.
Absolutely. What I'm wondering though is where do the two stewardship plans stand in light of this? Because we're touching on all the trail topics, wildlife topics, left and right, and I'm kind of feeling like it's all getting superseded by this. I mean, you know, the discussion, you know, even dogs, and I think we're all pretty well clued in on that, but you know, there might be something in wildlife stewardship that talks about that. Just like that, there's probably gonna be something in there about zones of influence. Trail impacts, I would think trails is gonna, you know, should talk about the need, almost like a landscape level view of trails, you know, what are the needs that we're gonna go by, how are we gonna determine? You know, what's a good place for a trail and so on. These are the kinds of things we're all kind of jumping in on, which is cool. I love these discussions, but meanwhile, we've been charged with coming up with these two stewardship plans. Do we put those on hold or do we put this discussion on hold to come up with those two plans? I don't know.
I'm agreeing, I think with you, Brad, in response to Julian's challenge. I see that we have a huge amount of written material that's come from public input, and it's come from discussions in this forum, in this meeting, in this committee, and it's come from the subcommittees that met last summer. So the challenge is to condense what we have in written form into something that is looking more like a management plan. You know, I'm thinking, my thinking is that discussion and talking is good, but it sort of evaporates at the end of the meeting unless we consolidate it into something written, and we have a lot of that already. So I think that was the challenge that I was seeing in writing a request for proposals, that we bring together the materials that are available and provide them to somebody who is able to synthesize them into a coherent document rather than
Yes.
half a dozen or more different documents.
I absolutely agree, and except for the fact that that person is gonna come back and we're still gonna have these things unresolved in this body. And so they can do all that, distilling and summarizing and synthesizing, which they would be a wonderful service to all of us. And when they came back here, we would be stuck with these things and we'd still have to do them. So one of the motivations of creating this little summary is to be able to, I think if we in this group could come to at least an agreement or be clear about where we disagree, and then we vote on it, then we could deliver that package to that individual without, you know, making them go crazy and without giving them an impossible mission.
Do you mean they'll agree on the resolution of those things, or just agree on the list as being sticky?
I mean, originally the list, that would be step one in the process, and then second would be, coming to resolution on those things, because, you know, we have the responsibility of taking decisions about those stuff, and then the writer will have to abide by what we come out of here and the previous documents that we generated. But this is the core, this is what we gotta talk about.
Versus the working group approach to try to hammer them out and then bring those proposals back for discussion.
I guess, Ian and Brad, one thought is like, I hear what you're saying. I'm seeing us like mostly on the same page. And I think if we could come to a resolution, an imperfect resolution to the sticking points, we could probably walk through and refine the trail stewardship plan and the wildlife stewardship plan. And wildlife stewardship plan, I would guess, you know, we're 99% on the same page. And that was really well done. And trail stewardship plan, we can provide feedback and knock it out. But I think we'll keep coming back to these contentious issues through those other documents if we don't just.
But it has to, real quick, it has to be said that that what Julian has presented here is dividing things into agreement and still contentious issues is excellent. I really like that. But in a comment actually I already sent to Julian, I think the one that is missing is the question of this elephant in the room, this bicycle question that keeps arising, which is determining by what decision making in a management plan can one decide whether a trail is designated for bicycle use or not. So we mustn't forget that one, because it's been a huge elephant, and there was some sitting in the middle of the room for as long as I've been involved directly or indirectly in this community.
Yeah, actually, Ian, after you wrote that to me, I put it in this version that I sent to everybody. So it does, I amended it after your comments, I think it's in there now. But I'll send it around later.
So we have voices.
Just
I mean, that's the
going forward, in other times, in other committees, I don't think we should like carefully deliberate something and say, okay, this is the perfect thing, and that's what we put out and defend to the public. I really think at some stage of this, even if it's in between, we should have options that have, you know, the pluses and minuses, because people won't understand how we're thinking about that and the depth of thought that went into them and what was a trade-off that we carefully negotiated. Like, because for, you know, NEPA documents, they'll have like 3 options, plus one is the preferred option, and for each of those, they show, you know, the different numbers of trails and expected this and whatever. So we don't have to be that elaborate, but at some point, I think we may run into problems if we just put out one thing with no dogs and no winter use and and say that's the perfect thing for this town without the pros and cons.
That's a really great idea, especially because we could, like, the 4 of us could create some options, and then as a group collectively, instead of being like, let's figure out which is the option, we could write down our pros and cons and sort of like agree on a preferred one, and that can go to public comment, or we can go back to this. But I think that allows us to be a little bit more creative in our thinking, because we're not like, well, this has to be the end thing, but it can be like, oh, here's a possibility, and you know.
Because the Forest Service would name one, well, this is the ecological version, this is the timber version,
Right,
this is the recreation version, and this is the preferred version where they obviously try to balance each other.
Yeah.
That's cool. Is it an option? I mean, we are an advisory group to the select board, is that correct?
Yes.
We don't actually make any decisions here except what to advise.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things we could do with that options approach is to give our best advice, like we could set out the options and then go through a process where we vote on, see which ones we like, and then they get to see what we voted, but they get to choose the options, right? Isn't that advice that we could offer up to the select board?
Yeah,
I think they want one option from us.
They do?
Yeah, they want, here's the plan,
Yeah.
you know, with 8 things or 10 things.
But
Here are
They
the
don't want
options
to
we
weigh it out.
considered.
Here, yeah, these are the options we considered.
But we landed on one.
We landed on,
But the cycle of public comment can involve options.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's kind of the way they look at appointments, in a way, right?
right.
You know, what I mean, so 3 people want to get on. We think we like, you know, number 2, but they get to see all 3 and they
Right.
could pick anyone.
We're deferring a last item on their agenda.
yeah, for sure. So we're just over time. There was one more item on the agenda, which was to share out some management plan updates that I had done. So I did a bunch of work on the management plan, and I have kind of a list of options for us and how we proceed. I can just share those out. We can have that as a discussion for next time. That way it can go in the packet as well, but I'll just mention that part of the options are incorporating the TSP, the Trail Stewardship Plan, the Cmte, the Wildlife Stewardship Plan into the management plan. And they're, basically, I want to present you all with a suite of options and be like, what do we want to do? Like, do we want to do it all? Do we want to do half? Do we want to pick and choose? Like, this is kind of an a la carte situation where we can like present, we can update what we want to update and update later what we want to update later. So I'll do that next time.
Do you need anything from us right now?
No.
We need to-
I can put anything on it, yeah.
Thanks for doing
Yeah, and any other comments from the public before we Adjourn. Okay, I get a motion to adjourn. Oh, next meeting.
You
Sorry.
listed a bunch of them, right?
June 24th.
Is that good with everyone?
It's like the last day of the.
I will join by June.
Okay.
Let's do the last day of in-service.
July.
June. Yes. 30th could be. Oh, we can go for fourth.
Yeah.
Fourth month. That means I should probably bring cookies.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll check it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Good meeting.
Go again.
Yeah.